The Forgotten Baltimore and the dumbest bill in America. This is Mark Fisher with Mark and the Millennials, and joining me today are Andrew the Fuji Fulginiti and Ryan the Squirrel Brady, and of course our producer Adam Katora. Welcome everybody. So first up, President Trump gets in trouble with tweets about Elijah Cummings. He's a representative in Congress from the state of Maryland. And Trump says the following: Representative Elijah Cummings has been a brutal bully, shouting and screaming at the great men and women of the Border Patrol about conditions at the southern border, when actually his Baltimore district is far worse and more dangerous. His district is considered the worst in the USA. And then Trump continues in his tweet: as proven last week during a congressional tour, the border is clean, efficient, and well run. Just very crowded. Cummings' district is disgusting rat and rodent-infested mess. If he spent more time in Baltimore, maybe he could clean up this very dangerous and filthy place.
Shots fired.
Yeah, I'd say.
So this all came on top of the fact that President Trump naturally was talking about how Elijah Cummings, who's the head of the Government Oversight Committee in the United States House of Representatives, is constantly attacking the border issues. But what's interesting is Donald Trump actually went to Baltimore during 2015 when he was campaigning, and he actually said a lot of things that I think everybody agrees with. Here's Donald Trump in 2015 in the campaign. Here he is.
Well, Baltimore is a very, very special case, and it's a very sad thing that's happened. And I know Baltimore. I have so many friends. David Cordish and a whole group of people. I'm in Baltimore a lot. I mean, prior to what I'm doing now. And I love Baltimore, and I love what it represents and where it's gone. And now you look at what happened in one night, just in one night. I mean, other nights were a disaster, but one night was catastrophic for Baltimore. You have to create spirit. You have to create jobs. You have to get people working. They have to want to work.
Yeah, so President Trump actually is talking about you actually have to want to work. You have to create jobs. Gentlemen, this is Donald Trump in 2015. Let's talk about this before we get into what caused the tweets. So go ahead, Ryan.
If he tweeted that instead of what he tweeted before, I don't think it would have been that crazy of an outrage, to be honest. But,
What did he say wrong?
Nothing.
Nothing. He didn't say anything wrong. I just wish he just, the way he said it, there was maybe not as tactful. I would have liked it, but then again, it got people up in arms.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly wasn't tactful, but that's not Trump. And if it was tactful, it wouldn't have gotten the traction it is. But like you said, Mark, what did he say wrong? You kind of have to paint a picture. Not everyone knows, the city of Baltimore and what it's like. Some people's vision may be solely based on the HBO series The Wire, and there was a USA Today article written, op-ed written about that, and he mentioned this. You wouldn't be far off if that's what you think Baltimore is. It hasn't changed from that, that city where drugs are rampant, corruption is rampant, the city's a mess, people are fleeing the city. So when Trump, calls it out for it is, people are erupting, but they don't even know it. They don't know the truth about Baltimore.
Absolutely.
A few days ago, the deputy police chief got mugged with his wife in broad daylight in a park in a usually
this is the
decent
deputy
place.
Police chief of Baltimore City, right?
The new one,
about?
The newly minted one that came from.
And he was mugged.
It came from I think Louisiana. He followed his old police chief, who's now the police chief of Baltimore, and it's like, oh, that's a good welcoming party.
So here's what's interesting. What set Trump off is Elijah Cummings' constant berating the Trump administration about the conditions at the border. And here's a great example, and here's a clip.
You feel like you're doing a great job, right? Is that what you're saying?
We're doing our level best in a very challenging.
What does that mean? What does that mean when a child is sitting in their own feces, can't take a shower? Come on, man.
Well, you know what, Representative Cummings? You know what it means? It means that maybe you should focus on your own district, which is exactly what the President of the United States tweeted about, because your district is an absolute mess and has been for generations. You guys know a lot about Baltimore. Tell me about it.
I asked my friends who live there, either from decades or from just living right out of college. They honestly say, I asked them, how do you like living in Baltimore? I love it, but I also hate it at the same time because Baltimore has a young population. It's being a cybersecurity center. Heavy industries getting back in, has a very deep culture, has a lot of good theater districts and the good sports history behind it. But then again, high crime rates, a lot of poverty, ineffective schools.
No opportunity.
Well, yeah, they go in there too for like low skill jobs, but they're trying hard. But then it's not being effective. They come down to the state legislature every year asking for more money. I think they got from the state like $430 million, but they still don't have AC in the schools. Pipes are bursting. I think 10 out of 13 of the high schools are failing.
Yep.
Like
exactly.
This is a city
come on.
that has been run by almost exclusively the
One
Democrat Party since like the 1920s almost. Now there's been some mayors and stuff, Republican mayors scattered throughout there, but the city council that has been run by the Democrat Party since 1923. The mayor has been, I think, a Democrat since the 50s, and the last 3 mayors, I mean, this whole city is riddled with corruption. That's one thing you have to understand. It's not like that was something in the past. Like today, the last 3 mayors of the city of Baltimore.
Sheila Dixon.
Yep.
Stephanie Rawlings Blake was ineffective during the Eddie Gray riots, and then we had our latest one, Catherine Pugh.
And they were all forced out due to corruption charges.
Due to corruption, exactly. And then we have a corrupt media because Chris Wallace interviewed Nick Mulvaney recently, the chief of staff in the White House. Chris Wallace interviews him and basically tries to conflate this district and what Donald Trump's trying to say in his tweet. Here's that clip. Here it is.
Well, let's start with what we didn't anticipate, and that is the Twitter war. President Trump attacked Democratic Congressman Elijah Cummings on Saturday, saying that his district in the Baltimore area of Maryland is worse conditions, more dangerous than along the southern border. I want to put up the president's statements. His district is considered the worst in the USA. Cummings district is disgusting, rat and rodent infested mess. No human being would want to live there. In fact, median household income in Cummings district is in the upper half nationally, and Columbia, Maryland, which is part of Cummings district, has been called the safest city in America.
Actually, that's not true at all because the district was so heavily gerrymandered by the General Assembly in the state of Maryland that they stretched Cummings district from the city of Baltimore all the way to Western Maryland. And it's considered one of the worst gerrymandered districts in the United States. And so Chris Wallace is conflating that gerrymandering issue with the fact that Cummings lives in the city of Baltimore and always has, represents that city, and nothing has changed. In fact, things have gotten worse.
Yeah, and that's what they're twisting about this. So all the big media outlets, including now Fox News, is they're taking the district as a whole and they're saying, "Well, look at this data." But what Trump was getting at was the city of Baltimore. We're not talking about the safest city in America, which Columbia is one of the safest cities in America.
Yep.
Yes.
He's talking about the city of Baltimore.
Yes.
When he's saying your district, he means where you live in Baltimore
Yes.
City. And then Chris Wallace is wrong. You're right on a couple of points. He points out that Trump calls it a rat-infested city, and people think that that's racist. Well, no. Orkin, a pest control company, literally puts out a list called the rattiest cities in the country. It's in the top 10, Baltimore City.
Oh,
100%. So that's true.
And there's stickers with people who live in Baltimore have stickers of rats on their car. Like that's more of an endorsement.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Bernie Sanders gets away with it because Bernie Sanders, after the 2015 riots in Baltimore City,
2014.
Actually 2015 because we double checked it. Yep.
I think so.
Oh,
yeah.
my bad
so
then. Damn.
after those riots, we actually Bernie Sanders actually visited Baltimore, and he was running for president of the United States, and he actually had some things to say about it. Here's a clip from Bernie Sanders.
What are your impressions as you walk our city?
Well, one would not know that you're living in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. What you look at is what would a third world country look like. That's a pretty sad state of affairs.
Yeah, so he calls it a third world country. Bernie Sanders does in 2015, and there's some press that happened. It's like, oh, how did this happen? We have no idea how Baltimore City became a third world country. It's not possible. It couldn't have happened. It must be because Republicans made it happen. I don't think so.
They should track where all that money goes to the city because it does not go to where it needs to go, like the schools and the infrastructure. The whole city's crippled because of ineffective leadership, and we've seen that before.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, to just piggyback off that, I mean, this is a city that is one of the highest in the nation as far as school districts and per pupil funding, right? They get all this money. I mean, they almost like $17,000, $18,000 per student.
Per student.
And almost all their schools don't have air conditioning. Where's their money going? You got these school board members that are flying to, taking extravagant trips and everything like that. So like when Trump's attacking the city and saying it's one of the worst cities in America, he's not far off. That's what's crazy is that people are conflating this and saying like, oh, he's being racist. It's like, no, he's actually bringing attention to a city that's in dire straits. great.
Exactly.
And Baltimore's geography has it primed to be a major player economically and culturally in everything, close to the federal D.C. itself, the corridor between New York and Georgia. Come on.
Yet people are fleeing. There was an article from the Baltimore Sun talking about census data saying Baltimore City, over I think since 2010, has lost 3% of its population. This is a city that had over 1 million people, and now it's down to 600,000. And it's the only jurisdiction in the state of Maryland that has population loss. Every other jurisdiction in the state of Maryland has gained in population since 2010.
Exactly. And people can't wait to leave.
Yeah.
I
if
think
they
a lot
can.
of recent grads go there from college. They go because the jobs are there, and then they live there for 3 to 5 years, and they go out to the suburbs or back to their home counties in Maryland. There's Howard County, there's Anne Arundel County, there's Prince George's County and Montgomery County closer to D.C., which almost is like a better deal to go to instead of stay in Baltimore.
Yeah, but so the Senate president of Maryland, even he said
What a gem.
the way it is in Baltimore. But here's the thing. In Maryland, the Senate president, the state Senate president, is the longest serving state Senate president in American history. And he still is in office. And in 1989, 30 years ago, he's a Democrat because the General Assembly in Maryland is completely controlled by Democrats. They have a supermajority and have for a very, very long time. He even said some things about Baltimore that were true, and that was 30 years ago. And here's the clip.
It helps educate my constituents as to why Baltimore needs the economic help. I mean, Baltimore is a ghetto. It's worse than inner city Washington, D.C. It is I hope you're not going to play this on tape.
Oh, there we go.
Mean, it is a war zone. I mean, it's crack. I mean, it's, these dime bags of PCP. I mean, they've got 1/4 of every kid is not in school each day. 50% of the kids who start off in school don't graduate. So, looking at things from a statewide perspective, we really have to do things to help.
And that's 30 years ago. That was 30 years ago. The same gentleman's in office, 30 years of the same stuff, the same policies, expecting different results. And we've had population decline year after year, and the city continues to decay. The public school system, 83% of the schools are failed schools in Baltimore City. I mean, we know about this. For those of you that are listening out there for this podcast, you're going to get more detail about the state of Maryland and Baltimore City than any other news source out there, because we actually are from the state of Maryland. And I was born and raised in Baltimore, and I'm absolutely disgusted with the way that city has been run by the Democrats' one-party system. Go ahead, gentlemen.
I just love it that it's all these commentators. They probably never been to Baltimore recently, or they never lived in Maryland or in the Baltimore area, and they say, oh, Baltimore's a great city. Granted, Baltimore does have a lot of great characteristics, as we've noted already in this podcast. But then again, there are issues that you just cannot be blind to, like the poverty, the food deserts. To Bernie Sanders' point, it's like a third world country in those areas that he was touring. There's no local grocery stores. Why isn't the city helping, making sure there's healthy food options in these poorer neighborhoods?
But there's a food desert, which means, of course, it's a Democratic term, which means that there aren't enough places for people to go shopping other than convenience stores such as 7-Eleven or some other kind of convenience store. And that's because there's so much theft and so much looting that stores have figured out the numbers, and it doesn't work.
Oh yeah, the mom and pop grocery stores that try to actually make a living in these neighborhoods, have the local neighborhood shops, they have to close down because of all the crime around it.
Well, that's what makes it so frustrating, is that the Democrats and these news outlets they're trying to get rid of everything. Trump's bringing light to this city that needs to be brought, and they're just saying he's a racist. And by doing that, they're trying to dismiss everything that he's talking about. They're playing the race card, and he's actually talking about something that needs to be talked about. He's calling out this congressman who's been in office for 20 plus years and has done nothing since he's been in office.
Exactly.
For his home city is Baltimore. They're misconstruing the numbers and data because his district's gerrymandered, but Trump's actually talking about something of substance, and they're just saying, well, he's racist, so they're just missing the whole thing.
And I think Andrew nailed it on the head. I think this is a perfect example of Trump derangement syndrome, because he says one thing very, very, I would say very harshly, but everyone loses their mind and doesn't actually say, oh, he does have a point, and then everything's rosy in Baltimore, which is
Sure,
Not true.
We'll get this. They're talking about the city is trash infested and rodent infested. The Baltimore City's delegation, they decided to make their priority in 2019 to close Baltimore's trash incinerator, which actually burns trash and creates electricity at the same time. They wanted to close it down because it wasn't a perfect solution for climate change, which would, of course, eliminated tons of jobs. And these were great high-paying jobs in the city of Baltimore. They wanted to just completely get rid of that. That was one of their priorities. Also to ban straws and to ban styrofoam cups. This is what Baltimore City elected officials are focused on. They should be fired because the city is a mess.
Which they
and
won't.
They're focusing on everything else. It's like, oh no, look over here. Styrofoam cups are the problem. Straws are the problem. The incinerator is the problem. It's not the elected officials. Go ahead, Fuji. You know a lot about this.
Well, no, I was just going to say, I mentioned earlier this USA Today op-ed. I think the last name was Robbins who penned it. He brought up the key point, and I agree with him that is the Democrats, is this going to be one of their rallying cries? Are they going to, say Baltimore, because they're coming to the aid of Baltimore, and saying as if Trump's attacking this city? He mentions, is this going to be their cry of the hashtag We Are All Baltimore, like in the 2020 election? Because if that's the case, we would love for them to use Baltimore as their model city. Because it is a mess.
Right. Even the mayor had to resign, the recent mayor, because she wrote a book called Healthy Holly, and she had state agencies basically giving her money, buying thousands and thousands of the books.
Which weren't printed or
which
could
were,
not
in
find.
some cases, weren't printed. In other cases, weren't delivered. In other cases, we're not really sure what happened. But what we do know is the money did land in her accounts.
Oh, yeah.
And apparently she's...
to her campaign office, no less.
Healthy Holly was so healthy that the book, when written, in some versions they spelled
green.
Holly one way, and in other versions they spelled Holly another way. She didn't spell Holly the same way in all the books.
Who was the editor?
Mayor Pugh, of course. So get this, the Baltimore Sun talking about this issue. We're going to close out with this. The Baltimore Sun, the editorial board, these are the reporters at the Baltimore Sun and the editors at the Baltimore Sun. They wrote an article about an editorial about Donald Trump's tweets, and they said, and it's entitled, "Better to have a few rats than to be one." That's disgusting. And here's what they said in part at the end. They said, We would tell you that he's the most honest man to ever occupy the Oval Office, the mocker of war heroes, the gleeful grabber of women's private parts, the serial bankrupter of businesses, the useful idiot of Vladimir Putin, which tells you how corrupt they are because he's not a useful idiot of Vladimir Putin, excuse me, and the guy who insisted there are good people among murderous neo-Nazis that he's still not fooling most Americans into believing. He's even slightly competent in his current post. He's not even slightly competent in his current post, or that he possesses a scintilla of integrity. Better to have some vermin living in your neighborhood than to be one. This is the Baltimore Sun. Rather than looking inward, the Baltimore Sun, rather than looking inward and saying, maybe after we've had all these years of Democrat politicians, generation after generation in failure, why don't we actually look at that and put the blame on Elijah Cummings and all these other elected leaders? This is passionate for me because I'm from Baltimore originally, don't live there now. But gentlemen, come on, final thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think this goes to Ryan's point of the people that have this Trump derangement syndrome, right? It puts on blinders. This was a great opportunity to talk about Baltimore as a city on a national stage and talk about all the problems that they have and how we can fix them. This is the city that got millions and millions of dollars from the Obama stimulus package and has done nothing with it. And over decades and decades has been run by these Democrats and nothing, and they say they're fine living with rats.
And I'm critical of Trump when it calls for, but Baltimore Sun's is redirecting away. They don't want to have you said into introspection of their city. They never do. So they went for low-hanging fruit, attack Trump where he's weakest, attack Trump where he's easy to get the views, get the clicks on their website. Granted, I could be critical of Trump in his relationship with Putin, how he handled some things or how he presented it, because it didn't always say you could have not said that way and stir more speculation. But anyways, it's again redirection by the Baltimore Sun. Baltimore Sun always has an agenda, it seems.
They're
and
crooked.
It's nothing
They are so
yeah.
crooked. Come on.
Like Washington Post. Oh.
Yeah, but the Baltimore Sun, I mean, I think is really, they
don't hide it.
But, here are my final thoughts. Representative Congressman Cummings, why don't you go home and why don't you just quit Congress, go home and actually help the people in your neighborhoods that aren't getting a proper education, that don't have jobs, that can't figure out a better way to actually make a better life for themselves. They have no hope, and this has been going on generation after generation. You should be ashamed of yourself, sir, for focusing on the border about people who aren't even American citizens when you have people in your own district who are worse off than those people. Shame on you. And I'm proud of saying that. Gotta say. So next up, Senator Christine Gillibrand says the first thing she'll do once elected is to Clorox the Oval Office.
Pandering.
Here we go. We've got a clip.
As president, what would you do to stop the antics of Vladimir Putin or any other foreign nation that wants to interfere in our democracy?
Okay, so on the first day that I become president, after I Clorox the Oval Office,
I can't take this seriously.
which as a mother, I would do.
You know what? I think if it was a really good interviewer, what he should have said is, where were you when Bill Clinton was in office? I'm just saying, okay? I mean...
Well, she did say, in hindsight, we shouldn't have given Bill Clinton the pass back then. It's like, oh,
she did say that. That's true, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, really, Cloroxing the Oval Office...
That's the first thing she's going to do.
Okay. Not, receive congratulatory calls from world leaders saying, congratulations on your win, first woman president, there's more important things than... I'm going to personally Clorox the White House.
I think talk to Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, what I found ironic is that there was some news agency, I forget, it slipped my mind who put it out, but there was an article written detailing how much of a germaphobe Trump is. I don't know if any of you guys saw it, but there's quotes from staff. If you have a cough, like I have a slight cough, you might as well just call out for that week. Like, you cannot be in the room. Like, he will tell people. Wow. He has told his chief of staff, cabinet secretaries, if they cough, they said he stops and stares at you. Like, this guy does not want to be sick. He's very health conscious. He keeps all of his closest, his body people apparently keep Purell on them at all times.
He's like a political Howie Mandel,
He's constantly putting Purell on. So it's probably a very clean Oval Office.
Who knows? The President Trump may make the new Superbug with all that Purell going around.
So next up, Andrew Yang, who is running for president of the United States, is interviewed by Chris Wallace, and he says something really interesting about his campaign and the fact that he's Asian, something that I just, it's like he's perpetuating a stereotype, but here's the clip. You got to hear it.
And some people are concerned that with your, in effect, $12,000 a year handout, that you're delinking income from actually earning a living.
Well, I'm Asian, so I love to work.
So there you go. I mean, if anyone else said that, no matter who it was, of course, they would be attacked. Most definitely a Republican. But Chris Wallace is talking about Andrew Yang's proposal for universal basic income, whereby every single American gets $1,000 a month, no matter what. And Chris Wallace is saying, well, like, why would you work? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, and so go ahead.
But could you live? Well, actually, technically, you could live off of $12,000 a year because you're underneath the poverty line, which means you get more benefits, and then there's no point to get above the poverty line because you lose all the benefits that the federal government gives you. Oh. So, sounds great. I honestly, Andrew Yang, I like his honesty because he sticks with his points and says, this is what I believe and this is how I'm going to do it. Great. He doesn't pander like the other people, so I just can't wait for tonight's Democratic debate. It is going to be a show.
His motto, by the way, for his campaign is math. Make America think harder.
Well, education system overhaul right there. Let's do that.
His UBI is going to cost $3 trillion a year, Fuji. $3 trillion.
So. Yeah, he's an interesting character because he's committed to UBI, but I think it's naive to think that UBI, when applied, that there are people that aren't going to just take it and not do anything, not be incentivized. I mean, there's been studies that saying that is the case, especially if we take it back to Baltimore, some of these inner cities where they don't make a lot of money, they're way below the poverty line, like $12,000 a year. That's a lot. They can live on $1,000 a month. Like, that's not a problem for them.
I always got a story kind of close to that. I used to be an intern for a biomedical company, and what happened is there was a new driver being hired. He came back from disability.
That's
right?
a squirrel. We got a squirrel.
Squirrel it. But anyways, I'm going to get to the point here. He started calling his disability officer for the federal government to get his checks, told him how much he was making. He quit within 5 minutes because he was making too much money and would lose all his benefits.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is
just saying.
UBI, right? UBI is going to cost $3 trillion a year. So he was asked, well, how are you going to pay for it? And he said, well, I'm going to do a value-added tax. So for all of you out there in podcast land, a value-added tax means a national sales tax. Woo. So when you go to buy something, anything, no matter what it is, you have your state sales tax that always upsets people as it is. And then on top of that, you're going to have a national sales tax, and that will pay for $1,000 a month for everybody in America. I mean, would millennials like a national sales tax? I mean,
I'll move to Delaware because they have no sales tax, and I'll just view that as a state sales tax, but I'm not happy about it regardless.
Yeah, I mean, you're in effect hurting the people. I mean, because everyone buys stuff, right? You have to buy your goods. You can't get them on the black market. You can't get your groceries on the black market, So everyone's got to pay the sales tax. So those people that are getting the $1,000, now they're paying state sales tax and a national sales tax.
You're getting
so it's hurting them. Yeah.
And isn't it ironic that the most regressive sales tax, the most regressive tax in America, out of all the taxes, is a sales tax because it hurts the people who are the poorest because they have to buy stuff, and that's something that they should be. So you know what I'm saying? They should be exempt from it. So next up, climate change activist. Climate change activists,
you can do it,
super glue themselves to the United States Capitol. So I'm not really sure why they did this other than to get attention and media attention. But what's funny about this is they start talking about, their issues, their climate change issues. And it almost sounds like, and I've said this for years, climate change is a religion for these people. Instead of, Catholicism or Protestantism or Judaism or whatever the religion, they've adopted climate change as their religion. So here's a clip of them in the United States Capitol.
I want to keep on having once-in-a-century storms every year, once-in-a-century floods, once-in-a-century wildfires, once-in-a-century fires.
You had to think about that one.
DC was underwater last week. DC was underwater last week. And it was on fire this weekend.
Wait, and it was on fire last weekend. So, they're like echoing each other. So it's almost like a prayer, where the minister he's chanting or he's praying in front and everybody and people talk, and that's exactly what that was like. And go ahead, Gus, you told me. Talk to me.
You're right.
This.
It is kind of creepy that it does. Some people get to that level where they think there's no other way. I mean, they're so set on the fact. I mean, this Green New Deal. These are the people that's supporting that. I mean, they're in their minds that if we don't do something now, that they think that the world's going to end, and we know that the Green New Deal is a sham. I mean, that the AOC's staff has talked about it. It's about completely changing the U.S. economy. It has nothing to do with necessarily climate.
But Fuji, we only have 12 years to live.
Yeah, at least they didn't use.
That's what they're saying.
Hey, they didn't use kids this time. Imagine supergluing kids to block
right,
staffers.
Like Dianne Feinstein when they took the kids in there. Remember that?
Dianne Feinstein read them the riot act. Say, I know what I'm doing. I'm
climate change rugrats. They were like, you must do something. You must pass the Green New Deal.
And the teachers are like guiding the conversation. They're here for this. Like, okay, come on. I kind of thought you told me when you saw the video, a police officer bumped his back up on the guy's arm that was like glued to the walls. He was like, ow! It's like,
he screamed.
Come on, dude.
It's like you super glued yourself to a wall, and you didn't expect pain. Like, how did you think you were going to get off the wall?
They may all have they all have a few screws loose, I think, to waste their time doing this. There's better ways to make their message heard.
Brando has got what plants crave. It's got electrolytes.
And if people know where that movie's from is...
help me out here. What is it again?
Oh, shit. I actually forgot.
Thanks, Squirrel.
Idiocracy.
Idiocracy, yes.
And there's my Squirrel. Idiot moment right there.
You got to do a squirrel one for that. I'm just saying. So next up, Travis Kinley is a Sumter, South Carolina minister. This gentleman is a minister. And he's actually pretty cool because he decided to sing the Lion King song. And apparently his pet donkey likes to sing it with him. And so here's the clip.
Get all the animals around me for this one.
Simba, whoa, whoa,
So I'm just wondering if that's his choir at the,
Or how did he train that donkey?
So I'm just wondering, does he have it's the donkey part of the choir, in the church? But this guy's actually really cool because he bought the donkey for $100, I think, because the person that he bought it from didn't want it anymore.
Yeah.
And the donkey's full of personality. You have to watch the video. So would you?
Yeah, I'd say I'm picturing like Shrek and Donkey, like in that dynamic duo there.
I'm making waffles.
Yeah. Shrek, that's right. He did look like Shrek, didn't he?
Donkey.
That's
Eddie Murphy.
That's a great
Eddie Murphy
point.
was the donkey. I love that movie.
I mean, I thought it was funny because obviously there are so many millennials that don't go to church anymore. And I was thinking about this as a baby boomer. And I think this would be a way to engage people to say, hey, this is a cool minister, right? He's a cool minister. He's broadcasting himself. So maybe it'll get more people to come to his church.
I think that would be cool, like maybe 1 week or 2 weeks in a row. But then after the fourth week, that the donkey's just in the back.
Well, I don't mean the donkey.
Away.
I don't mean the donkey every single.
Donkeys in the back.
I just mean I just mean to get people in the door, not the donkeys. The donkey's not basically leading the congregation. Okay, come on. That was Adam Couture, by the way, our
Letter
producer.
to the Corinthians.
Read by Donkey. Yeah.
Named Ezekiel from the Old Testament.
So next up, we have the dumbest bill in America. And we don't have music, do we? Oh, come on. We had it last week. So the dumbest bill in America, the Baltimore City Council voted unanimously. We're focusing on Baltimore this particular podcast for obvious reasons, but the Baltimore City Council actually voted unanimously in October of last year to hike taxes on real estate transactions to fund the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Now go figure, right? So think about this for a minute. You have people who are leaving the city and in droves for decades. Okay, the city had 1 million people, now only has 600,000 people. One of their concerns, one of the many concerns, is that the real estate taxes are unsustainable for their homes that they own. So Baltimore City's idea is, well, we're going to raise your taxes to make housing more affordable for everybody else.
Tough pill.
So what happens? The high earners, right, and the mid earners.
Yep.
They both are leaving. And more and more. So Baltimore said, well, wait a minute. So we're going to just we're going to do an excise tax. And the excise tax is going to be on the sellers. Because so many people are leaving, we're just going to tax. It's like an exit tax, We're going to, give us some money on your way out of Baltimore so we can at least keep
Gotta
the poor.
pay your toll, yeah.
Exactly. Gentlemen, thoughts on this dumbest bill in America?
So this is kind of almost like reversing message because former Mayor Pugh had a whole deal to bring back this program called the $1 Home Program, where you basically buy a home in a developing part of the city for $1 with the guarantee that you'll live there for a set amount of years, and you would put money into it and renovating it, and then hopefully raise the value up of the area, improve the area itself. Basically, it was make the area better. And now it's like, okay, you're going to already overtax Baltimore residents because they're getting hit with city taxes and then state taxes and federal taxes because the city taxes you to oblivion, especially the water bill is not coming in on time. Then you see a couple $1,000, you're like, whoa, where's my, I get quarter or half a year? It's like, no, that the city's ineffective again.
Yeah, this is, if you didn't already get it from the first segment that we talked about, this is another one, right? You got the people that are running the city are the ones that are corrupt. And they're attacking the people that the less fortunate in their city, which is fascinating. You got all these people leaving that can probably afford these types of taxes, right? The population's declining. Mm-hmm. But like Ryan mentioned, the water bill. There's all these reports, you can search it, of the people that are in poverty that have water bills, and they're getting these multi-$1,000 water bills. But it's because they're misreading meters and all kinds of stuff, and they're attacking these people who can't even afford probably $100 water bill, and they're getting crazy water bills. This city's out of control.
And the lower income people, they're the ones that cannot leave the city, so they're trapped and left with the bill because the rest of the tax base has already fled to the other surrounding counties.
Exactly. That's really the issue, right? Because they've taxed people so much that the folks with money have left, so they're kind of running out of people to tax. Right.
Right.
And if there were ever an example of failed Democrat policies as well as socialism, an example of what socialism looks like in America, go to the city of Baltimore, and they're doubling down. And I'm just wondering, at what point will the people of Baltimore finally rise up and say, you know what? This one-party system stuff hasn't worked for us. Maybe Donald Trump's right. Maybe what do I have to lose? Maybe I should vote for a Republican. And this is what my hope is. This is what my hope is as a conservative, that one day in my lifetime, there will be a realignment, a political realignment of the African-American community, because they will see that their interests are not being represented by the Democrat Party. In fact, they are being taken advantage of.
That's true.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, Trump brought that up himself. It's interesting that the president that has probably been most attacked for being a racist and, against, African American population and Latino population has brought up these issues more than probably the last presidential administration. I mean, what did Obama do for the city of Baltimore? I mean, Trump himself said what you said, Mark. He said, "What have you got to lose?"
Yes, exactly.
I mean, this is what you got. You guys have been living like this for decades. What have you got to lose? Try to change something.
Exactly. It's amazing that they keep voting the same city council members in year after year, election cycle after election cycle. It's like, what? It's like, oh, it's not getting better. Like, why do you keep voting them in? Oh,
that's right. Ban straws. It'll make it better.
Plastic in the ocean's an issue, but we digress on that. We'll talk about that later.
Raise real estate taxes. That'll make it better. Come on.
No, that's not going to make it
So that's
better.
the dumbest bill in America. So next up, a uniquely millennial problem.
Uh-oh.
A crazed mom calls on Disney World to ban childless millennials. And she did so because apparently, and she tweeted about this, and the tweet went viral,
Did she get trolled?
And she was very upset because there were single millennials there, lots of them, and they were, of course, in groups, but they were childless. In some cases, there were couples that were millennials and they were also childless. They were clogging up the lines for souvenirs and for food. And this mom said they shouldn't be allowed. They should be banned because they don't have children. Millennials, you are really getting people upset. What's going on here?
Apologies. I've never been to any Disney theme park, to be honest, my whole life, but I think I'm missing out. I need to go. All my friends say it's awesome. It's a good time, great rides, great food, great experience. But honestly, this sounds like a first world problem. I think there's bigger fish to fry. And honestly, come on, just go in the off season. I don't think there's a lot of people there, and also get the high speed pass. You can bypass a lot of lines.
She should go in the off season, or you should as a millennial.
Oh, I could if I wanted to, but I don't know. I went to Orlando. It was really hot during the summer. I'm like, I'm good. Probably the off season's for my
Well,
speed.
if you saw a mom that had 3 children, you were right in front of her, and there were like 20 people in front of you at a line to get like a bottle of water. Would you let her go first?
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know. I'd like if I was like right there at the cash register, she was right behind me. Like,
I know it's not a fair question. For
no, that's a hard one, man.
What if she's
put a gun to my head?
She might be a millennial mom. Is this a millennial mom? She could be. Sounds like she's a millennial mom.
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure if she's a millennial mom.
No,
I just think,
no.
I think.
Well, she made it an internet thing, so she made herself an easy target.
Here comes Katora.
I got to come to the defense of millennials here. I think she was just probably angry and annoyed and like, hey, that group of people, they're younger than me. Let me just complain about them.
There we go.
Go ahead.
Like, kids are going to Disney World and having a good time and not getting into trouble. Like, it's a lose-lose situation for millennials. What do you want them to do? Like,
well, she was complaining the way they were dressed, too. She said the women millennials were dressed really inappropriately and so forth. So,
hey,
I don't know.
Freedom of expression.
What's Disney? So it's a family park. So
didn't you say there was like a rule where if you're of a certain age, you can't start wearing the Disney costumes because it may confuse the kids, and then it's like, whoa, we don't. That's not one of our employees.
What's that? I haven't heard this before.
Yeah. So there's a rule in Disney World where if you are over the age of, I think, 13, you're not allowed to wear like costumes. And that's because Disney has their actors who play the characters, and they
they're
go
vetted.
they go through rigorous training to play like a princess or something.
Oh.
And Disney at their parks also makes sure that no 2 of the same characters are in the same location at once.
Oh, so
it's all part of the Disney experience, because then they
So Squirrel can't dress up as Aladdin then.
No, he can't.
I'm good.
He'd be asked to leave. So
probably with no refund.
But you can. I heard that the after this story, I heard that there's millennials that are making T-shirts that just say like
That's hilarious.
Childless millennial, and they're just labeling themselves.
Capitalism at its finest right there. Someone's making a lot of money right now. There's a lot of millennials buying those shirts, I guess.
Childless millennials.
We can't afford kids anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, baby boomers.
You can't afford it. You have to pay for our Social Security. Come on, that's what we need.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
I want to grow my nest egg, not lose it.
I just want to go on Splash Mountain over and over again, and now I can't.
So next up, Tech Talk. So Terra is a company, and they want to change the way that we live because they are building these houses that kind of look like beehive pods kind of thing, and they're going to 3D print them. That's at least what they're saying. And they're multi-story houses. They're not like really wide, but they're multi-story. And so Terra wants to make them out of biodegradable stuff. Yep, there's the word. And here's a clip.
The way that we build today takes a lot of material and it takes a lot of energy. There's no way that we can sustain our growth on this planet unless we really reimagine what a building can be.
So this is just a small clip because they're trying to raise money on Indiegogo. But yet, I think it's a good idea, kind of, because it looks like it's pretty inexpensive. But I don't know. You guys saw this. What do you think?
I was wondering what the price tag was, but he has one point. Our growth is not sustainable. Just in general, we have 7+ billion people on the Earth. We're going to reach the Earth capacity by like 2025 or 2050. I forget what it was. I heard it a while ago. But anyways, him saying biodegradable, that makes it hilarious because why am I going to buy a home that's going to lose its structural integrity over time? Yeah. Like what? Like how many years are they insured for?
You can eat your house, basically. I'm hungry. Let me take some doorknob.
Or animals can eat your house.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's exactly right.
That's a wasted investment too. Like you people buy homes to start their investments in accumulating wealth. Why buy a home that's going to lose value by literally degrading as you live in it?
So Fuji, is this the future of millennials? Is this their future living quarters? I mean,
for some, maybe. I know that, I don't know if it's a strictly millennial thing, but like the tiny house trend is like a trend that's going around.
HGTV.
Yeah, exactly. No, I guess this is an interesting idea. I hadn't heard of this before, but think how important the housing market is to the economy. The economy. I mean, all the jobs and construction and real estate, all that kind of stuff. This is kind of like a disruptor in there, so that's kind of interesting.
And a 3D printing is like basically an automated building process, and I guess unless they're
where are the jobs? House, exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's what Andrew Yang would be coming here and say, see, you need UBI because there are no jobs left.
Yeah.
Innovate.
Exactly. Well, that's it for Mark and the Millennials. Thank you for joining Mark and the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. Thank you, Andrew Fujiniti, Ryan the Squirrel Brady, and of course, our producer, Adam Katora. Check us out on YouTube and Facebook. We will see you next time.